All right, let's get into it. Today we're doing a deep dive into, well, a single day back in the 13th century that basically changed everything on the Iberian Peninsula. We're talking about the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa.
That's right. And we've got sources ranging from, papal decrees all the way to battlefield reports, and they all kind of point in one direction.
Absolutely.
Our mission here isn't just to say who won, it's to really get into the nuts and bolts of why this battle fought on July 16, 1212 wasn't just another fight in the Reconquista.
Yeah, why is it seen as the moment? The point where Muslim rule in Spain really started its irreversible decline.
Exactly. We're looking for those key insights, the specific reasons it shifted momentum so completely.
Okay, so context. It's crucial. This wasn't just some skirmish. We're talking a major turning point. Location. Southern Spain, near what's now Jaén province.
And you have to remember the background. The Christian kingdoms were still reeling, really, from a massive defeat at Alarcos back in 1195. The Almohads definitely had the momentum then.
That defeat kind of hangs over this whole event, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Because of Alarcos, the Christian side knew, they just knew, that facing the Almohads piecemeal wasn't going to work. It was suicide.
So to counter the dominant power, the Almohad Caliphate, led by Caliph Muhammad al-Nasir, or Mir Mamulin, as he was known, they needed something.
Wow.
Well, almost miraculous politically.
Unity.
Okay.
Absolute unity.
Right. Okay, so let's unpack that. This Christian coalition, it wasn't just Castile saying, hey, neighbors want to help out. This was a huge deal, right? Forces from Castile, Aragon, Navarre, Portugal.
A massive undertaking.
So how did King Alfonso VIII of Castile manage to pull that off? I mean, these kingdoms weren't exactly best friends usually. You've got him, Peter II of Aragon, Sancho VII of Navarre. How did they keep it together?
Well, that's where you get into the deeper context, both political and, crucially, religious. Unity came partly from sheer necessity, but also from a kind of divine mandate.
Ah, the Crusade aspect.
Precisely. This wasn't framed as just local warfare. Pope Innocent III declared it a formal crusade. That backing was critical. He offered spiritual rewards, sure, but also applied immense political pressure.
So it wasn't just kings deciding this. It had the weight of the church behind it, kind of weaponizing the highest authority in Europe at the time.
Absolutely. The Pope's legates were there, making sure everyone understood this was about defending Christendom itself. It helped, let's say, suppress the usual arguments over land and glory, at least for a while.
So the army that gathered wasn't just local soldiers.
No, far from it. You had Crusaders from elsewhere in Europe joining the Spanish military orders, think Calatrava, Santiago, alongside the core forces of the kingdoms. It was probably the biggest Christian army ever assembled on the peninsula up to that point.
Okay, formidable. And the opposition, Muhammad al-Nasir and the Almohads, they weren't exactly unprepared, were they? They were the dominant force.
No, they were absolutely the established power. Their army was a mix of elite troops from North Africa and Al-Andalus. They'd picked their spot carefully, holding the high ground in the mountain passes. Their camp was reportedly huge, well defended.
And the Caliph himself represented more than just military power.
Right, he was the religious leader too.
Really?
He positioned himself deep within a fortified camp, probably feeling pretty confident after their victory at Alarcos years before.
Okay, so this massive unified Christian force, backed by the Pope, marches south. They need to break through into Almohad territory. But it wasn't just about numbers, was it? Strategy and execution were key. How did they even manage to engage the enemy?
Right, this is where things get really interesting and where you see how battles can turn on, well, unexpected details. Initially, the Christian army was completely stuck.
Stuck how?
The Almohads had blocked the main mountain pass, the Despeñaperros Pass, which, by the way, means dog thrower pass. Lovely name.
Charming. So a natural defensive choke point.
Exactly. An absolute nightmare for anyone trying to attack. They couldn't get through without facing a potential slaughter.
A geographical stalemate. They're stuck.
Please. And you can imagine the tension rising. Retreat would have been disastrous. The coalition might have just fallen apart right there. But then comes this crucial moment. The breakthrough wasn't brute force.
It was intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Local knowledge.
Yes. I love this bit too. Multiple accounts mention a local shepherd, Martin Halaja.
The shepherd, okay.
He apparently went to the Christian command, specifically to Alfonso VIII, and offered to show them a way. A hidden path, unguarded, that went around the main Almohad defenses.
Wow, so avoiding the main pass entirely.
Completely bypassing it. This route, sometimes called the Camino de la Vereda, let the Christian army emerge onto the plateau, onto the plain near Las Navas de Tolosa. It forced the Almohads to fight on ground that wasn't nearly as advantageous for them.
That one piece of information from one shepherd totally changed the strategic picture.
Incredible. Okay, so they're on the plane now. What was the plan? You mentioned a coordinated attack. How did it unfold specifically?
It was a layered approach designed to use the different strengths of the coalition. They set up in 3 main lines, or battles.
Okay.
The first line, the vanguard, had a lot of the military orders, plus Portuguese and Navarrese troops. Their job was basically to hit the enemy hard, soften them up.
And the second line?
Led by Aragon, providing depth, reinforcing that initial push. But the real key, the decisive element, was the third line.
Which was?
Alfonso VIII of Castile. He held back his own Castilian knights, the heavy cavalry, in reserve.
Smart. Don't commit everything at once.
Very smart. Because the initial attack, well, it was bloody. Reports suggest the vanguard actually started to buckle under the pressure. The military orders took terrible losses. For a moment, it looked like it might break.
Wait, so if the first wave was struggling, why didn't the Almohads just crush them then and there? Was it really that close? Oh, absolutely. Sources suggest there were moments of real panic on the Christian side. The Almohad saw the vanguard wavering, and they committed their own reserves, thinking they had it won.
But they hadn't counted on Alfonso's reserve.
Exactly. At that critical moment, just as the Almohads were pushing forward, Alfonso unleashed his third line. Fresh troops, heavy cavalry, hitting the Almohad center, which was already engaged and probably feeling overconfident.
That must have been devastating.
What?
A fresh wave crashing into tired lines.
It completely shattered their formation. This Castilian charge punched right through, heading directly for the heart of the Almohad camp, towards the Caliph's position.
And that's where we get to the most famous part of the battle, isn't it? The legend.
The legend of the chained guard. Yes, Muhammad al-Nasir's personal bodyguard, often described as black slave warriors.
And the story goes, they were literally chained together.
That's the legend, chained together around the Caliph's tent to form an unbreakable wall, basically forcing them to fight to the death, a symbol of no retreat.
Whether it was literal chains or just, fierce discipline, the symbolism of breaking that specific unit
is immense. It signals the total collapse. The last line of defense for the leader himself is gone.
And according to the accounts, particularly involving the Navarrese troops under Sancho VII,
that line was broken, the Navarres punched through, and the collapse became total. Muhammad al-Nasir had to flee. He literally ran from the battlefield, abandoning everything, his troops, his standard, his authority.
A complete rout. The Christian victory was decisive. What about casualties?
Devastating for the Almohads. Orders of magnitude higher than the Christian side. Although it's important to note, the Christians did lose key leaders, especially from the military orders. That was a significant blow, even in victory.
So al-Nasir escapes the battlefield. But that's just the immediate outcome. His flight and what happened next seems crucial for the longer-term impact.
Absolutely critical. His escape wasn't just a personal retreat, it was a catastrophic failure of leadership. It demoralized everyone left and signaled the collapse of Almohad authority, and then the killer blow. He died shortly after, back in Marrakesh.
So a leadership vacuum opens up almost immediately. How did that contribute to the decline? Why couldn't they recover?
Well, the Almohad Caliphate at that point didn't really have a smooth, quick system for succession, especially not in a crisis like this. His sudden death kicked off years of internal power struggles, infighting back in North Africa.
So while the Christian kingdoms were unified and riding a wave of victory,
the Almohads were tearing themselves apart internally. They simply couldn't muster the resources, the manpower, or the unified strategy needed to launch any serious counterattack in Iberia.
Got it. So Los Navas de Tolosa didn't magically conquer Spain overnight, but it created this window, this power vacuum that the Christian kingdoms could just systematically exploit over the next decades.
Exactly. It gave them unstoppable momentum. You see the fall of major cities like Cordoba, Seville, happening in the years that followed. It became inevitable.
It really reset the whole dynamic. Before 1212, you could argue the momentum could still swing.
Yeah.
After 1212, the path seemed set.
It essentially removed the threat of a big, coordinated counteroffensive from North Africa. The remaining Muslim principalities in Spain, the Taifas, were left much weaker, fragmented, facing these now very confident, united Christian powers.
And let's circle back to that incredible detail, the breaking of the chains around the Caliph tent. That story didn't just fade away, did it?
Not at all. It became a foundational element of identity, particularly for Navarre. King Sancho VII supposedly brought back some of these chains as a trophy.
Seriously.
Actual chains.
Well, that's the legend. And that powerful image, the golden chains, often shown linked with an emerald, said to represent the caliph's tent, was incorporated directly into the coat of arms and the flag of Navarre, which they still use today. That's incredible. It shows how one moment, one possibly embellished detail from a battle, can echo for centuries and become part of a living identity.
Absolutely. The legend served its purpose back then, too, of course. Powerful propaganda solidifying Navarre's heroic role in this pivotal victory. It reminds us that history isn't just about troop movements, it's about these memorable, defining moments that capture the imagination.
Okay, so let's try and pull the key takeaways together for you, the listener. Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa, 1212. Decisive because, one, you had that unprecedented political unity on the Christian side, pushed by the Pope.
2, that crucial tactical advantage gained by bypassing the main defenses, thanks to the shepherd, Martin Halaja. You can't underestimate that.
And 3, the swift and total collapse of Almohad leadership after the Caliph fled and then died, triggering internal chaos they never recovered from.
It really was a watershed moment. It set the trajectory for the rest of the Reconquista.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with. How often does it happen that a single battle, maybe even hinging on something as small as a hidden path shown by one person, can completely unravel a huge imperial power?
And not just unravel it, but fundamentally reshape the identity of entire regions, entire nations for centuries to come. You see it right there on the flag of Navarre.
It really makes you think about how history can turn on these seemingly small details. Sometimes it's not the grand strategy, but the key that unlocks the terrain. Fascinating stuff. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are zoning in on a really specific moment, a single day actually, July 16th, 1212.
Las Navas de Tolosa. It sounds maybe like just another date on a long timeline.
Right, a battle centuries ago.
But this place, this specific mountain pass in the Sierra Morena, it was, well, arguably the absolute crux of the entire Reconquista, a real turning point.
Yeah, our sources are unusually consistent on this. This one event seems to have just completely flipped the script on the Christian Reconquest. Sped it right up.
Before 1212, things were pretty much stuck. A stalemate, you could say. Afterwards, the whole power dynamic just collapses.
So our mission today is to unpack that. How does one day of fighting ripple out to have such enormous, long-lasting effects, not just militarily, but politically, culturally, the whole 9 yards?
It's a fascinating domino effect.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Right, so to really get the impact, you need to picture the before. Before 1212, Almohad power in the south. It was solid, unified, dominant.
They'd even beaten the Christian kingdoms pretty badly not long before, hadn't they?
Oh yes, Al-Andalus, 1195. A crushing defeat for Castile. That victory really cemented the Almohads as this formidable barrier, almost impenetrable.
So any Christian gains were slow, painful, often temporary.
Exactly. The status quo was strong. Which means that going into Las Navas de Tolosa, for the Christian side led by Alfonso VIII of Castile, losing wasn't really an option.
It could have been the end of the road for the Reconquista dream.
Potentially, yes. The stakes were incredibly high. And that perhaps explains the outcome. Because the key finding isn't just that the Christians won. No, it's how they won and what that victory did. It fundamentally destroyed the Almohad military machine in Iberia.
Destroyed how? Just casualty.
More than that, it was a complete rout, annihilation of the main army command, elite troops, supplies, everything. And the immediate result, the emir, Muhammad al-Nasir, he flees the peninsula.
Wow.
A defeat like that. It wasn't something they could just bounce back from quickly, because the Almohad military wasn't just an army, it was the government structure in many ways. Okay. So snapping the military spine snapped the whole political body.
Precisely. And that political collapse, that fragmentation, that's where things get really interesting.
Because the immediate effect of the army being wiped out was the loss of central control, right?
Total collapse of centralized Muslim authority. The Caliphate's power just evaporated overnight. And Al-Andalus, well, it started breaking apart again.
But it had fragmented before, hadn't it? Into those Taifi kingdoms. Why was this time so decisive? Was it just the scale of the defeat?
That's the crucial point. Yes, there were earlier fragmentations, often tied to internal issues like succession fights. This was different. This was a sudden, violent external shock that just obliterated the very foundation of their power.
Okay.
The Almohad system, you see, it was very centralized, based on strict religious ideas, yes, but also on this powerful military structure. When the Caliph and his core army were gone,
the local rulers, the Taifas, were left exposed.
Exposed, and without the legitimacy, the taxes, the organization to suddenly raise huge new armies on their own, they couldn't coordinate. So instead of uniting against the Christian kingdoms pushing south,
They started competing with each other. Little city-states focused on local survival.
which must have made things much easier for Castile, Aragon, Portugal.
Significantly easier. And faster, that's the word the sources use. Easier and faster. Instead of one big enemy, they faced smaller, isolated targets. They could even play them off against each other.
And you really see that speed in the timeline after 1212. It's kind of shocking. Before, like you said, small gains over decades.
Yeah.
Afterwards,
It's a landslide, a domino effect, absolutely. Just look at the major cities.
Cordoba.
Cordoba falls in 1236, and the sources suggest it fell relatively quickly because the local taifa just didn't have the backing, the resources, the morale that the old Almohad Center provided.
Yeah.
No relief column was coming.
Then Valencia goes to Aragon in 1238.
And Seville, maybe the biggest prize, falls in 1248.
All within about 35 years. A single generation, basically.
It just shows how deep that structural damage from 1212 really was.
Okay, so that's the impact on the losing side. Devastating.
Yeah.
But pulling off that victory in the first place, that must have required huge coordination from the Christian side. How did winning change them internally? It takes more than just good feelings to keep that momentum going for decades.
That's absolutely the other half of this equation. The psychological boost was immense, obviously, but operationally, it was transformative.
How so?
Well, the sources stress that the cooperation needed for Las Navas, getting these often rival Iberian kingdoms, plus Crusaders from Northern Europe, plus the Spanish military orders all fighting together, that success cemented a new level of Christian unity.
It proved they could work together for a massive win.
Exactly. And you mentioned the military orders, the Templars, Hospitallers, and especially the Order of Calatrava. Their role becomes much more prominent after this.
What did they bring to the table that, say, King Alfonso's own troops didn't have?
Organization. Innovation, really. Their prestige soared after 1212, particularly Calatrava. But it wasn't just status. They became experts in the logistics and tactics of long-term conquest.
Logistics? Sounds a bit dry, but it's crucial, right? What kind of innovations are we talking about?
Oh, definitely crucial. Think about standardized supply chains, efficient land management. They were masters at quickly securing conquered territory, building castles, organizing resettlement. They ran warfare almost like a business.
Wow, okay.
Highly efficient engines of both war and colonization. So when a big city like Seville fell later, these orders had the systems ready to lock it down, govern it, bring in settlers, make the gains permanent, not just a raid.
So the battle gave them the unity, the morale boost, and honed the operational tools needed for systematic expansion.
That's a great way to put it. It shifted the Reconquista from just fighting to, well, state building on the move. And culturally, too.
How did it change culturally?
The victory strongly reinforced the religious, the crusading aspect of the whole enterprise. It became seen even more as a sacred duty.
And when the systematic expansion kicked into high gear, bringing huge areas under Christian control so quickly,
Yeah.
what did that do to the cultural landscape on the ground?
It forced intense, immediate contact. Christian settlers moving into lands where large Moorish populations often remained. And this is where you see that unique fusion happening.
The blending of Moorish and Christian influences.
Yes, becoming a defining feature of medieval Spain. It wasn't just one culture replacing another overnight.
Can you give an example of how that fusion looked right after these conquests?
Sure. Architecturally, you get the flourishing of the Mudéjar-style Christian churches or palaces built by skilled Moorish artisans, using those characteristic horseshoe arches, geometric tiles, intricate brickwork.
So the conquerors were using the skills of the conquered.
Absolutely. And intellectually, think about the translation schools. Even as the fighting continued, Christian scholars were gaining access to Islamic and classical knowledge preserved in Al-Andalus. It was reshaping European thought. Legally, too, new administrations often borrowed existing structures for things like land ownership or city governance.
So the culture itself was being actively rewritten in this period, mixing elements from both sides.
It was a dynamic, complex process directly fueled by the speed of the post-1212 expansion.
Okay, so let's zoom out, tying it all together. What's the big takeaway? the long-term significance.
Undeniable, really. Las Navas de Tolosa marks the point of no return for Muslim dominance in Spain. It created vulnerabilities, political, military, logistical, that were irreversible.
And it kicked off this sustained period, a whole generation of Christian expansion and transformation.
Setting the stage, ultimately, for the final fall of Granada in 1492, you can draw a pretty straight line back from 1492 to the rupture created in 1212.
That rupture sounds so decisive, but the battle itself must have been incredibly brutal.
Oh, undoubtedly. Immense violence. There's that famous painting by Francisco Van Halen. It tries to capture the sheer chaos, the scale of the fighting, especially around the caliph's camp.
A reminder that these huge historical shifts often pivot on moments of intense, bloody conflict.
Exactly. It wasn't a polite negotiation, it was a violent break that changed everything.
It really is staggering thinking about the power of a single day. We often focus on slow, gradual historical change, but Las Navas is a potent reminder that sometimes one event, one battle, can just completely rewrite the map.
Not just the map, but the political structures, the military capabilities, even the cultural identity of an entire region for centuries.
That unique character of medieval Spain, the cultural fusion, the power of those military orders, the unified drive, it wasn't inevitable. It feels like a direct consequence of that Almohad collapse in July 1212.
I think that's right. It really challenges you to think, doesn't it? How many other points in history were decided by moments like these sudden victories or defeats whose ripples are still shaping our world?
A very powerful thought to end on. Thank you so much for walking us through the sources and unpacking why this one battle mattered so profoundly.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating moment in history.
And thank you, our listeners, for joining us for this deep dive into the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa. As always, we encourage you to dig into the sources yourself. We'll see you next time.